Hey there guys, what is going on? Today we are back with another Call of Duty Cold War tier list. Today we are ranking the best assault rifles in Cold War Season 4. Now most of you know that in Cold War Season 4 we did get a brand new assault rifle, the C58, and I know what a lot of you probably think about that weapon and we're going to be talking about that shortly. But just for a brief explanation of what our tiers are here, we start at the bottom with the dumpster tier. These are the worst weapons in the game, something you would never ever touch over anything else. Basically weapons that you would only use for unlocking DM Ultra and so on. The situational tier are weapons that are viable in some certain situations but do struggle at others. Weapons like this would normally include something like a Mac 10 for example that is really excellent up close and then struggles at longer distances. Viable weapons on this list are of course weapons that are pretty much usable in most situations. They're not going to be the best weapons in the game, but they're definitely not going to be the worst. These are sort of middle of the road weapons, as I said. The next tier up is the meta kind of tier. These are weapons that do have flaws but are really strong. Weapons like this usually would include things that are a little different to normal but still have good times to kill and excellent stats all round that make them almost very viable here. And then the next tier up we do have the meta. These are weapons that are fantastic in the game. Really can compete with pretty much any weapon in the game apart from things that are completely broken, which is our next tier. These are the broken tier weapons of course. These are weapons that are probably too strong, do things a little too well in certain regards, and continue to get buffed for some reason. I don't know why they keep doing that, but you know what we're talking about, of course. The first weapon that we do have on our list here is the AK-47. These are alphabetical, so keep that in mind. As I said, AK-47, this thing just keeps getting better and better in the most recent balance patch. They did change some of the attachment stats slightly. They did reduce the negative that you do get from running a suppressor on this thing by about 2%, which is a minor range buff, which I don't think was necessary at all, but still makes the weapon very good. You get a very fast time to kill with this thing at about 300 milliseconds out to about 70 meters or so, which is absolutely ridiculous. So we do have to put this in the broken tier. This thing has all the stats that you need to make it super powerful in this game, and for some reason they keep making it better. Again, alphabetically, the next weapon that we do have here is the brand new one, the C58 assault rifle. Now, as I said, I know what you guys think about this gun, and there's only really one place for it. It doesn't have the best time to kill, it doesn't do too much damage, the fire rate's like 550, which is just ridiculously slow. You would assume that something with a slow fire rate would absolutely chunk people and at the very least get a 3-shot kill, even if you include headshots into that, but it just doesn't get there. So of course the C58 goes in the dumpster tier, just being pretty much unusable. The recoil on it is actually really easy to control. It doesn't have really much recoil at all outside of that initial burst, and then the rest of it is like visual recoil. Really easy to hit shots with this thing. But those shots come so few and far between that it really doesn't make this weapon worth using in terms of decent time to kill, and range values are really short. It's just a bad gun. I would very much expect this gun to be getting some buffs in the very near future, and realistically the only reason you would use this is to level it up so you could use it in Warzone, where in Warzone it's actually a pretty good weapon. The next weapon that we do have on our list here is the Fara 83. Now this is a weapon that I do very much enjoy. I have worked out how to run this as a 5 attachment class setup, but I think it might be a little stronger as an 8 attachment class setup, which is really nice. I feel like in most situations, the best weapons in the game do run a 5 attachment class setup, so you can run 6 perks, and you get that great combination play. With this, you do get a 300 millisecond time to kill with the Fara 83 out to about 65 meters or so, which is again very powerful, very similar to something like the AK-47. However, they don't really keep buffing the Fara 83 like the AK-47 does remain clear of it. But again, this is a weapon that is very good in most situations, and for the most part, you can either run a 5 or 8 attachment class setup, but I feel like 8 is a little stronger here, just because of how some of these attachments actually work. The iron sights, I don't prefer them just normally, so you do have to run an optic, and it gets a little messy from there, but I do feel like the Fara 83 is a meta weapon in this game. Very strong. Definitely competes at most ranges with pretty much any gun in the game, and this is a good place for it on our list here. Next weapon that we do have here is the FFAR 1. Now this thing is very similar to something we have talked about previously in the C58, but it does something a little different. It does have the fastest fire rate in the assault rifle category, which is really nice here, but for the most part you can't really make do with that. So you either have a low fire rate and high damage, which the C58 really doesn't, or you'd have a high fire rate and low damage, which again is basically the FFAR 1. The recoil on this thing is its main issue though. You can't really keep those shots down in any sort of certain situations. Outside of those close ranges, it can be very difficult to control the recoil on this thing. It doesn't kill that quickly, the range values are kind of meh, you can't really run a 5 attachment class setup on this thing, it's just a little janky. And again, the only reason you would really want to use the FFAR 1 is to level it up so you could have a decent weapon in Warzone. And even then, I don't think it's that good in Warzone anymore. So again, the FFAR 1 probably belongs in the dumpster tier. We were situational with it last time, but Somebody changed my perspective on it. I can't remember exactly who it was. I think it might have been Shark. But again, this thing is absolute junk, man. Like, just make it a little better. Make the recoil easier to control. You don't even have to change the time to kill values or anything like that. They are still going to be slightly less than the AK and so on. But I mean, just make it easier to use. Like, it doesn't have to be like an absolute recoil hose thing. Just make it better. The next weapon that we do have here is the Groza. Now, I actually really like the Groza. I think it is quite competitive in this game. It's definitely not one of the tip-top meta weapons. It's not broken. It's not the absolute tip-top. I feel like an appropriate tier for something like this is meta, kind of. It does have a pretty good time to kill value at slightly behind, I believe, the Fara and the AK-47, but it's not that far behind to make it super, super worse. The attachment options are really good. The needle-like iron sight makes it very, very easy to pick people off from longer distances. However, it does have a kind of snaky recoil control that sort of can be mitigated a bit by attachments. But again, the 8 attachment class setup is what you want to do with this thing. So I feel like meta kind of is a good place for the Groza, as it does have good stats, but it can be a little unreliable in certain situations, making it kind of difficult to pick people off sometimes. And other times, it absolutely laser beams people, which is really, really nice here. So meta kind of is a good spot for the Groza. Now, the Krig 6 is the next weapon on our list here, and this is a weapon that I flip-flop back on pretty much every day. The Krig 6 is ridiculously easy to use. It is an absolute laser beam, but the time to kill on it is around 330 milliseconds, 340 milliseconds, which is worse than some of the best weapons in the game. That's not good. But again, this is a weapon that is ridiculously easy to use. You can close your eyes and you will still hit your target if you are just aiming in the center of your screen. You'll hit the shots. That's as simple as it is with this thing. This is an absolute laser beam. Like, this is the ACR from old without sort of those good damage statistics and so on. It's just a laser beam. You will hit shots with this, and that makes it fairly usable. It's definitely not one of the best weapons in the game because it does have a relatively slow time to kill compared to the AK and the Fara and so on. But I feel like this is a weapon that anyone can pick it up, anyone can use this thing and just have an okay time. So I feel like the Krig 6 belonging in the viable tier is a fairly good reason. I think it could also belong in situational, but I think it's not that bad. In most situations, you're going to do fine with it. You're not going to excel in it. I guess you are sort of hitting those medium distance shots. And then again, the recoil will carry you through there. Being able to hit shots is really, really important in this game. Now again, after my last review, I said the QBZ is a weapon that does need a little bit of love here, and I still think that. They haven't really touched this since, it's been a while since they did anything to this weapon at all. They did say in some of the attachments on it, but I think they made it actually a little worse here. I wouldn't mind seeing a couple of changes to some of the damage numbers, maybe bullet velocity values, maybe make the recoil a little tighter. This thing doesn't bounce around too much, but again, it could just be one of those weapons that is an absolute laser beam with a slightly slower time to kill. At the moment, it does sort of lag behind some of those other weapons in terms of time to kill, recoil control, handling speeds, but this thing's fine. It's like the world's most okayest gun. I really haven't touched this thing too much, but it is still a weapon that you can get away with in certain situations and have an excellent time. And it's very, very similar to the Krig 6 with probably just a slightly worse recoil pattern. So again, the QBZ probably belongs in the viable tier. You're going to do fine with this weapon regardless of what you put on it and how you play it. I think 8 attachments is probably the best option. Again, this is one of those weapons where you don't really have a decent 5 attachment class setup. But that is what it is. It's an okay weapon. You're going to do fine with it. And then the last weapon that we do have on this list here did actually receive some changes as well in the most recent balance patch that were quite positive in terms of the suppressor usage. You definitely want to run a suppressor on this thing now, as it doesn't decrease the range values by as much as it did previously. This isn't the top tier meta weapon. Again, it does have a slightly slower time to kill than like the AK and the Fara. But again, this is a weapon that is quite good. It's very comparable to something like the Groza. The 8 attachment class setups that you do want to run on this thing make it quite powerful. You can get kills with this. This just feels really, really nice in this game. It doesn't excel at anything. The recoil's pretty good. The handling speeds are pretty good. Damage numbers are pretty good. TTK, yeah. This belongs in the meta kind of tier, and there's not really much else to say about something like this. The XM4 is just a good weapon in this game. It is a little better than some, and it's a little worse than others. And I feel like this is a pretty good tier list here. Like, we got the AK in the broken tier. We got the Fara in the meta tier. Meta kind of is the Groza and the XM4. The viable tier is the Krig 6 and the QBZ. No situational guns. I feel like I did change my mind on the FFAR one from last time, and this thing is absolute junk. And in the dumpster, we do have, as I said, the FFAR one and the C58. I feel like that's a pretty good list here. It is a little bit of a shame that the C58 is an absolute dumpster fire of a weapon. They just need to change the damage values on this thing. Headshot multiplier. Give it a 3-shot kill, man. That's all it needs to be a decent weapon in this game. Like, you want to have that punishing rate of fire if you miss shots, but you actually want to be able to get kills with this thing. So having a faster time to kill with those 3-shot kills would be beneficial. But I still don't know whether this would be that good if it did have that high damage. It's just one of those things. We'll have to wait and see. And if they do change it, hopefully they buff it. But again, thank you very much for watching this one. I do massively appreciate it. Of course, make sure you do hit that subscribe button with those notifications turned on. I think we're about 40-ish subscribers away from 5,000, so if we could hit that goal, that would be absolutely massive. And of course, I will see you in the next video. Bye!